Hey everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. So for today's video, I have some Dollar Tree Farmhouse dupes, and this time we are duping some Michaels goodies. I have a full playlist full of anthropologie dupes and Pottery Barn dupes, and just recently I started doing Michaels because I love their pieces, but sometimes they're just too expensive for what they are. So I really hope that you enjoy this video and you stick around by subscribing to this channel, because once you hit subscribe, we instantly become best friends.
Did we just become best friends? Yep!
And please hit that notification bell. YouTube may or may not let you know when I post, but just in case they don't, follow me on Instagram. I always post all of my new projects and some other goodies. So let's go ahead and get started. For this tutorial, I used this vase from Dollar Tree. Now these come in 3 different sizes. I have the largest one, but originally I was going to use a smaller one. Now I also have this paper. It's from Michaels and it's 79 cents. But if you don't want to spend the money, you can always print something out. This is the printout that I did for my pumpkin and for the last Michaels tutorial, but my printer is out of ink. Usually I would just cut that out. This time I'm using the 79-cent paper because 79 cents was a lot cheaper than buying ink. I'm cutting off the top, and then I'm going to measure it out to make sure that everything is covered, and it is. So with some Dollar Tree Mod Podge to make my life a little easier, I'm putting it in a bowl, and then I'm going to start brushing it into the inside, and you'll see why when I start to wrap it around. So I'm going to put a generous amount on the inside, and then I'm going to start brushing it onto the outside as well. I'm only going to cover about half of the vase, and then I'm going to grab my sheet and I'm going to make sure that it is nice and straight, perfectly aligned with the floor, and then I'm going to start to smooth it out and wrap it around. Because I have a camera in front of me, this was a little bit more difficult, but make sure that you're putting plenty of pressure on it and smoothing out the wrinkles, and then do the other side once you see that that one piece has already stuck in place. So just keep on pulling and smoothing out. And then you can go ahead and cut the excess, but I just went ahead and covered the rest. Some areas I do have some wrinkles. Like I said, I have a huge camera in front of me, but with my hands, I just kind of smoothed everything out. So once everything is smooth, I'm going to go up to the top and I'm going to start making little notches just to turn that in. You can completely cut this down, but I wanted to cover the inside as well. If you're planning on using real flowers with water, then definitely don't do this because Mod Podge is not waterproof. But if you are using this for real flowers, then just cut it down and make sure that it is nice and straight and aligned with the top piece, and just add a generous amount of Mod Podge. Make sure you let it dry really well before touching it, or you will lift up the paper. So this is the original from Michaels. It is $9.99 and a lot shorter, not too expensive at all, but I think it was really cool that we were able to upcycle something. You can even do the same thing using an old coffee can, and you have a very similar look for less than $3. For this tutorial, this is more of an inspiration rather than a dupe because it does end up looking really different, but I'm using a Dollar Tree wreath form and these wildflowers from Dollar Tree. I'm just going to go ahead and clip them all down and then start gluing them in place. I normally just open up the wreath and put them in, but because this wreath has seen some better days and is already really thin, I just figured this is going to be its last hurrah. So I am just hot gluing it in place. And I'm using in total 2 bouquets of these wildflowers. So if you want to go ahead and use more to make it thicker, then by all means. But I think that with 2, once you cut all of the stems out, it looks pretty darn good. So once I have everything in place, I am going to continue to just see if any spots are missing anything. And instead of putting the entire thing, I'm just going to remove some of the white flowers and just use the greenery, or the other way around, whatever I see is missing. I really love the greenery on these particular flowers. Dollar Tree is definitely stepping it up. So on the spring wreaths that I've seen at Michaels, the flowers that they're using are white peonies, and usually Dollar Tree does carry them, but I couldn't find any, so I just used these white roses from Dollar Tree that I had from a previous tutorial. They're already off of the stem, and I'm just going to start putting them in place. One of the wreaths actually looks this way, but I couldn't find it, so the one that I'm going to show doesn't look like this at all. If you wanted to add more of the white roses, it would probably look a little bit better. But I was trying to mimic the one that I saw in stores, and I should have gotten video of that one instead of the one that I did. So I'm just going to continue to place my white flowers now that the roses are on. So this is a look at the original that I did get video of, and if you want to add more of the roses or peonies to make it look like that, then you can. This was $59.99, which to me is a little excessive. And here we have my version, which in comparison does look a little sad, but it is well under $5. For this tutorial, I'm going to be using these Crafter Square canvases, and this is an 8x10, and I'm just going to be removing these staples. Now you can use this using a regular staple remover or an upholstery staple remover. I already have two that I've removed, so this is what it looks like, and there's going to be two sides to this. I use two, but you can just use one. Now these are free stir sticks that I got from Walmart. I thought I had enough, but I didn't. So if you wanted to use these, this would be absolutely free. You would just kind of need to cut off the end to cover the bottom of your little tray. So I didn't have enough, so I'm going to use jumbo popsicle sticks. But like I said, you can definitely use the free stuff. I used 7 in total, and I just added a generous amount of glue and then started placing my popsicle sticks. By the way, I did clip the end of the popsicle sticks just a bit so that it wouldn't show on the other side of the frame. Just make sure that this is nice and straight, and if some does seep on, if you're not staining it, it's not an issue. If you are, then make sure that you are wiping it up quickly and kind of sanding it a little bit so that your stain can go on nicely. So now I'm going to let this dry completely. If you want, you can put some weight on it so that it dries evenly. Just make sure that you remove all of the glue. Let it dry completely. And once it is dry, we're going to set that to the side. It's time to work on our beads. For beads, you have a few options. So you have these beads from Dollar Tree, and I used them in last week's tutorial. In order to use these, you will have to paint them. So the way that I painted them was basically putting them on a skewer, and once I had them all on the skewer, I grabbed my paint of choice and just kind of went crazy on it. You can also spray paint. Now, if you are going to use these beads, you might want to pick up about 4 packs because they are different sizes and you're going to only want to use one size for this, which is why sometimes Dollar Tree isn't the better option. This is another Dollar Tree option. It's in the hair section, and the benefit is that it's all one size, but you will need a few packs. Or you can get these at Michael's. This big old jar is $9.99 with a 50% coupon. It's $5. So for this tutorial, I didn't even use a third of the container. I separated them all into sizes, by the way. So I am going to use this. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I wasted $2.50 on that. I'm going to go ahead and put them on skewers. And the reason that I'm going to do this is because it's going to make it a lot easier to get a nice straight line with the beads. I'm not going to stain this or anything, but it makes it a lot easier and neater when you have them all together. So this is what it looks like, and this is what's going to cover the 10-inch portion of the 8x10. So I made 2 of those, and they have 20 beads. And then I made 2 for the sides, which have 14 or 16. I'll double check and I'll write it on the screen. In order to keep these in place, what I did was I removed each bead at the end. I clipped it down with some scissors. These are just my work scissors, which is why they're so messy. And then I added a little dab of hot glue and placed my bead back on top. This is just going to help hold it in place, and I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Now that I've secured my 4 sides with hot glue, I'm going to take this piece off and bring back the piece that I had added the wood to the bottom. Now you can adhere this using a few different methods. You can either use wood glue and just let it dry in place with a lot of patience, or you can use hot glue. Hot glue and wood hold surprisingly well, and this isn't going to be one of those trays that you really want to lift up and carry and put heavy stuff on while you're lifting it up. So to me, the hot glue method worked really well. So at this point, I really like how it looked with just the beads and not the top piece. So it's up to you. If you want to save a little money, you don't have to use the second canvas. But I was trying to get this to look as close as possible to the Michael's version as I can. This is a lot smaller than the Michaels one, but if you wanted to make one that is pretty close to that size, then I would totally recommend making the frame out of 97-cent Lowe's sticks in the shape of the canvas. So now I'm going to do the same thing to the top and add glue to major points of it, press it in. And at this point, since it's completely dry, I'm going to go ahead and move on and use some white paint. Any white paint will do. If you have chalk paint, then great. And with a really dry old brush, I'm just going to dry brush white because the Michaels one does have dry brush all over it. It's also stained, but I honestly really didn't want to stain this. I've stained stuff on my channel so often that I felt that just keeping it the natural wood color with a little bit of white would look really good. And I'm kind of glad that I kept it this color, but of course if you want to stain it, you can. Now here's a look at the Michaels one for $24.99, and here's a look at mine for just under $5. I'm only counting the beads for $2.50 because I'm going to use the rest of the beads on another tutorial. For this tutorial, I'm going to use this small vase from Dollar Tree, and these are the beads that I have left over. I have a ton from that pack. Like I said, this was $5 after using a coupon at Michaels, and I have a ton of beads, so I'm counting this as $2.50 since I used them in my previous tutorial. But if you want to use all Dollar Tree, then you can use these beads and paint them, but you will need about 4 packs, or you can use these from Dollar Tree as well. They're in the hair section, and they all come in one size. I'm going to go ahead and remove the label from the bottom of the base, and I'm using this Dollar Tree floral wire. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to start stringing some beads until I get the width of the jar. So this is going to be a little time consuming, but in total, the medium-sized beads, I used 27, and it covered the entire width of the jar. Once I have that sized out, I'm going to cut off the floral wire, and then I'm just going to start twisting it until it is nice and tight. I'm going to wrap it around itself and then cut it off. And I'm going to make 2 of these, one for the top and one for the bottom. So as you can see here, I am twisting it really well, wrapping it around itself, and then removing the excess wire. Now I'm going to remove the beads, and I'm going to take a long piece of floral wire and twist it on a random bead in 2. So it's going to look like 2 little shoelaces. I'm going to twist that up so it's easier to start stringing my other set of beads. Now this is going to be the length of the jar, so as tall as you want it, that's how many beads you string. I made my first set of beads way too tall, so it is kind of slouchy on one side, but that's totally okay. So I'm counting how many I've placed, and now I'm going to grab my other beads, and I'm just going to string it onto a random bead and start twisting it around, cutting it off, and tucking that wire into itself. Now the reason that it doesn't matter where you put the first one is because you're still able to move around the beads. So once you put them back in place, you can just twist them, and now you're going to count the bottom. You're going to count 7 beads over and do the same thing. You're going to put a wire in half and then twist it so it's easier to string beads. There was no mathematical reason for me to do every 7 beads. If I wanted to be more specific, I would have divided 27 by the number of rows I wanted to have, but I just chose every 7 beads. I'm going to count 7 beads from the top, and I'm going to try and see where these meet. I'm going to crisscross those, and then I'm going to cross the top. So every time a bead meets in the middle, I crisscross it, and then I crisscross the top, and I always start where I last left off. So I'm going to string it right where that same bead is, and then I'm going to count 7 down. 7 from the top, if that makes sense. It's just going in a crisscross and doing the same thing over and over again until you end up with your original bead. So at the bottom, I'm counting 7, and then I'm attaching it to that row that I created previously. And then you're just going to do this over and over until you finish. Now, if you want, you can use the rest of the beads and make a little handle for it. The original does have a handle, but I wanted to use this for a candle, and I didn't want any wood around the flame. So here's a look at the original, and it is $19.99. The jar is much bigger, but that's up to you what size jar you'd want to use. And here is a look at mine. So I really, really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did, please be sure to give me a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you so much, and I will hopefully see you on the next one.